Kia ora tātou, nau mai, haere mai, and a warm welcome to everybody for our Wednesday, 10th of April meeting of the Rangitāne o Manawatū committee. And if I could ask Councillor Fitzgerald to open with karakia.
Tēnā koe te kahika. Kouta mako tai mai nei tēnei ahi tēnā tātou te whare. Me karakia tātou. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tāhie.
And thank you, Councillor, and a warm welcome to everybody again to our meeting. It is being recorded, be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Just in terms of health and safety, unlike the event of an emergency, entranceways with the green signs, we evacuate through, we assemble next to the clock tower in Te Hine, the square. In terms of smoking and vaping, it is prohibited here. It's a non-smoking facility, and again, unlike the event of a defibrillator being needed, that is located in the foyer entrance on the ground floor. Any incidences, please report them to our committee administration. We'll go through to number 2 on our agenda, and that's around apologies. And I have 2 listed there for Chris Whaipu and Wiramu Tiawiawi. Is there anything else from the floor? There being none, I'll look to move those. I'm going to have a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. In terms of notification of any additional items, I don't have any. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to move far too quickly. So we'll go back to the apologies and we will look to move those, please. If we could vote. That is passed. 8 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, moving through to our next agenda item is notification of additional items. Again, I don't have any. There's nothing from the floor. Declarations of interest, if there are any. Again, I haven't been notified of any.
Operationally, I'm involved in 7, 8 and 9, and I also sit on the Te Apiti governance group. Thank you.
Thank you. That has probably prompted me as well, because I sit on the Te Apiti governance group as well. So we better note those, please. All right. In terms of public comment, I don't have any public comment. There's nothing from the floor either. We'll go through to confirmation of our minutes of the 28th of February 2024, and that's around the minutes of Rangitāne o Manawatū committee meeting, the 28th of February 24, part 1, public be confirmed as a true and correct record. That's on page 5 of your papers, members, so if there are no matters arising from that, I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. No other matters arising, we will vote, please. And that is passed, 8 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, we move through to number 7, which is our first report, and that's around the Te Apiti Manawatū Gorge Master Plan update. And I'll invite Aaron Phillips, one of our parks managers, to speak to us on that. That's page 9 of your papers, members.
Tēnā koutou, tēnei ahi Mayor, Councillors, Rangitāne representatives. I do have a couple of quick apologies to make for some of my typos in the report that the governance team was good enough to catch for me, but I didn't amend quickly enough to before the paper was published. and with the second paper that I'm presenting today. So I rely a bit too overly heavily on my immediate manager, Kathy Devatot, who's very good at picking up things, and my attention to detail wasn't good enough this time in her absence, so apologies for those who've picked those up. In terms of the Te Apiti Manawatū Gorge project, I'll cover a few quick things in anticipation of some questions, and then look forward to answering other questions that might be unanswered. It's something that Council has been involved with since 2006, and initially that was built around biodiversity and some smaller recreation and cultural features, but it gained good momentum over the years and needed to progress into a bit more of a formal structure and have a bit more weight behind it in terms of a governance group. So after the governance group was formed, a master plan was put together in 2022. And as you can see in the report, there are 18 key projects listed in that master plan. In terms of working through who's delivering those projects and what they'll cost, that's still underway, but I'll cover a couple of the key ones that relate back to the Palmerston North City Council. In terms of your existing investment, I guess, in that space, Palmerston North City Council contributes $68,500 a year towards what happens out at Te Apiti, made up of looking after the toilets for $21,000 a year, which we own, and that excludes any renewal costs, and a $47,500 a year contribution to a pool of funds that are administered through the working party governance group. There are four key projects at the moment that I thought it was worth bringing to your attention through the report. There is the Ashurst Loop Track, or the Three Bridges Loop. You'll be aware of this through some reporting, or you've already received to the Finance and Strategy, the councillors through the Finance and Strategy report, through the funds that we've been attempting to tap or using through the Recreation Fund for the Te Ahua Turanga Highway. However, I note in my report that I'd mentioned that where an update report was coming to the April Finance and Performance meeting. Apologies. At the time of writing this report, we thought we were going to have that finished for April, but we're now in May. We'll be in May. We didn't have quite some of the detail quite pulled together, and we're waiting on a little bit of work from the consultants. So this report's an error in that where it says April for the report back on that. But there are three kind of key choke points, as we've called them, for that proposed Three Bridges loop. There's an overpass over the railway line from Pembroke Street to the Ashurst Domain. In summary, without the detail of the coming report, the feasibility of that looks sound. It looks reasonably doable. The heights at which the bridge need to be above the railway line have been considered, and it's not an overly significant structure in terms of height above the existing ground levels. So that's looking reasonably positive. That's currently budgeted for within some of the roading active transport programs in the LTP, but is reliant on Wakakotahi co-funding. So we'll bring more detail back in that report when we get to the Finance Committee. The pony trail ramp, or the reinstating what was a ramp from the top of the terrace at Ashurst down to McRae's Bush, is proving more complex and expensive than previous reporting to Council. I haven't got a firm number yet. Those are just being finalised now, and it'll come to the Finance and Strategy report. But that will be something that might need consideration in future 10-year plans, being a bit late for this one. Or consideration of alternative funding sources and options. We're currently exploring some other options at the moment and whether we can make something else work, but I'm probably not in a position to discuss that just yet because it involves some private land. So we'll talk about that at a later date. The Saddle Road Bridge, just a correction to my report where I noted that the lane widths would be below standard and require some sign-off. Some of our roading engineers have reworked the options with the consultants. We can now achieve the minimum lane width, so we wouldn't be in breach of any roading standards, but we'd have a very narrow walkway on the bridge. And those of you familiar with the little walkway on the Bulls Bridge out on the state highway there, we'd be talking that sort of environment where we've got quite an undersized walkway compared to what we might like. And this situation where if cyclists were coming across in either direction, they'd probably need to dismount to get past each other. But we'll bring that detail back once we've got the final information from the consulting team. But those investigations are progressing, and we'll have some more information coming forward. The second, I guess, major item that I've highlighted in the report is the pedestrian cycle bridge across the Manawatū River at Ashurst, next to the existing Ashurst Bridge. I think there's a media article on it last night or the night before about that, so it won't be, those who've read that will have understood that the investigations into using a clip-on structure found that it wasn't feasible. I'm not an engineer, so I've generically labelled that geotechnical and structural issues, but they've basically said we can't do it. It won't work, and they're now looking at a separate bridge. And there's an image in the report of what that's proposed to look like. I did note there's comments about funding approval, and I sought a little clarification from Wakakatahi NZTA project managers, and I'll just read so that that's so that I'm not adding any information accidentally myself. It says, as the project needs more funding than was initially approved, we are required to go through a process to get the board approval for the cost adjustment. So it's the board's decision as opposed to a ministerial decision, though the board obviously acts on the behalf of the minister. So I hope that clarifies. So I guess it's a variation to a contract, and they need to get that approved at the appropriate level. It's an expensive addition to the project, although in the scheme of the whole thing, so much. Sorry. The other two matters that I thought it was worth, or key projects I thought it's just signalling in this report, is the Gateway Park. Think of this as I guess it's the old gravel car park, and the entrance and welcoming features that were part of that, the landscaping, the toilets, as part of the highway work that's being a new gateway park is being established, but there's a lack of clarity at the moment about how that will be managed, who will look at what that will cost, where the renewals will sit. We've got some negotiations to do with Wakakatahi, with the wider gorge stakeholders about how that will go forward. It doesn't sit on PNCC land. There's no clear and obvious organisation to take the lead on that at the moment, so there's some conversations to be had. And similarly, there's a feasibility study being conducted for visitor centres or a discovery centre, one at either end of Te Apiti. Again, that's not at a stage yet where there's had conversations about who's paying, who's looking after it, what will it cost to run. So those conversations are still to be had. We're assuming, given the priorities and the stages those pieces of work are at, that that'll be information that'll come back probably for the 2027 10-year plan. There's a lot of things to work through and other work going on, so we're assuming that's those conversations need to be lined up for that funding time frame. So in terms of the Te Apiti report, hopefully that's covered some questions. I imagine there might be a few more.
Thanks, Aaron. You might want to leave the microphone on. I'm sure there'll be some. I'll kick off with mine. The Pathway Bridge across the river, which is part of the Te O Turanga road project, highway project. And thank you for your commentary and with NZTA's additions as well. And I'm not sure if you can answer this, so I'll give it a crack anyway. Isn't it a resource consent condition of that project?
It is, Councillor, yes, it was a condition of the consent.
So why is it now, and that money hasn't been, or it's the project's gone over budget, so they're now looking for money from regional transport plans and everything else?
Yeah, unfortunately I can't answer that question.
I didn't
have to put that to them, yes. Yeah.
Couple of others. Pembroke Street Overbridge. That'll be a pathway type bridge, cyclists, walkers, users, is that right?
That's the aspiration, yeah, to cater to the equestrian community if we can too. Yeah.
Yep. And what year is that in our LTP?
Oh, now you might have me on the hop. I thought it was. I didn't seek clarification from the roading team before, so I'm a little bit cautious of answering. But I thought it was within the first 3 years
The first 3 years of LTP?
of the LTP. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can somebody find out and get back to us? Yep, somebody. It looks like somebody will. Also, I see that the Gateway Park, NZTA, and the Department of Conservation, both government ministries or agencies, don't see it as their remit to look after it.
Certainly, no one's put their hand up, and that question has been posed by some of my colleagues who have since left council over a number of years on this project. Who's paying for looking after it? And
So they think the city is.
that's been implied.
Okay.
Or cautiously suggested. Yeah.
Yeah, which city? Wellington could look after it.
Yeah.
Okay, I might leave some commentary to that. The Discovery Centre, which Danielle and I have seen, some good plans and dialogue around that. Is the Shannon family that are looking at their project, which is pretty well next door, have they been in? Do you know if they've been in the mix of all of that?
I couldn't answer that question, unfortunately, Mr Mayor. Apologies, I'm relatively new in my involvement with the project, and I'd need to go back and check whether they were.
If you could perhaps just make some notes there and come back to us on those, just for the future. All right, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Just a follow-up on the Gateway Park. Who does own that land?
I believe it's an NZTA ownership.
Okay.
They have to double check some boundary lines to be absolutely certain, but I believe it's all within the road reserve, so to speak, for the state highway.
Okay, thank you. And just the second question is around the Discovery Centre feasibility study. How has that study been funded?
I would have to check the detail, but it was through the pool of, I believe it's through the pool of funds that are allocated to the project. I think there's some notes on who contributes what in one of the pages. But I'd have to check again. Apologies, wasn't involved directly with the project at the time that was commissioned, so I'm not
would that
precisely sure.
Would that include council PNCC funding, or do you
I would need to double check it.
Yep.
It possibly was funded through CEDA, but I'm not sure. Was it CEDA? Oh, thank you, David. Yeah,
through CEDA? Okay.
through CEDA. Yeah.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Councillor Sabellin.
Thanks, Aaron. My question was also about the Gateway Park and who owns it, but just following on from that, is it a requirement that the Transport Agency are developing the Gateway Park, but not necessarily a requirement that they will own and maintain it in the future?
Yes, so it's part of the highway development costs is to develop that park, or the entrance to Te Apiti, so to speak. But it's unclear who will look after it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
All right. Well, thanks, Aaron. That's all the questions done. Thank you for the report. Some really exciting stuff there. So we've got a recommendation, members, to approve. It's around recommendation to the Rangitāne or Manawatū Committee around the Te Apiti Master Plan update, that the committee received the memo titled Te Apiti Master Plan Update presented to this committee on 10th of April 2024. I'll look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Again, thanks to the officers. There's actually quite a lot of work in the background here which is connected to the wider master plan, but the bridges loop, which includes that new bridge across the Awa, which is connected to the new highway, and just would like to just make a quick comment that the city has sent a submission into the Regional Transport Committee that be ranked alongside other projects which are priorities for the city as well. It actually is a consent condition, resource consent condition for the agency to complete that highway, and it's no different to what we do in resource consents or anybody else does, and they must complete it. It seems now the funding of that is coming into question and exactly where that is coming from. So I suppose that is the real question to be answered. It looks very good. It seems to have taken a heck of a long time to get to that stage, but it looks like it will be built, or it has to be built really, for them to open the road, or be allowed to open the road, even if that's a staged aspect. So look, we look forward to that. The Gateway Park, again, just understanding from the officers when Pembroke Street is on our books. I know we've approved it, and it is in the wider LTP to obviously be agreed to as well. Ashes people have long advocated for some connection directly into the domain, and this would actually make a loop through the new park, but also connecting through the bridges, etc. The Discovery Centre, which is a longer term plan and possibly could be linked in with a commercial or a private development which is happening right next door from the Shannon family. I think there's synergies there to perhaps rather than building two things right next to each other that we combine and may be able to do something together there in a public and private sort of partnership. But that has got some, excuse the pun, but some water to go under the bridge there, so I'm sure that will be worked through in time. So again, happy to move this and hope that you can support it. I'll open it up for any other commentary. There being none, we will vote, please. It has passed 8 votes for and none against. Thank you. All right, moving through to number 8 on our papers, and again invite Aaron, our Parks Manager, back up, and this is around the Manawatū River Framework Progress Report, and that's page 19 of your papers, members. Aaron.
Yes, similar to the last one, I'd like to take just through a few quick highlights.
Aaron, could you just put your microphone on,
Apologies,
please?
yeah. I'd just like to take you through a couple of quick highlights and anticipate there'll probably be a number of questions. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I suggest that it's been a pretty transformational project, the Manawatū River Framework, when we cast our mind back to the river environments 10 years ago. It's been a pretty impressive journey over the last 6 to 7 years of implementation. In terms of investment, there's been around $6 million in terms of parks budgets invested, although the report notes the $25 million overall, recalling that Hiara Kotahi out to Linton, the research institutions in Massey was through the roading active transport project, and that was certainly one of the major, or the major project in that time period. The report highlights some of the achievements, and the survey was of interest to us. We accept that those councillors who are statistically minded will probably critique the survey as not being statistically reliable, but we think it gives us a reasonable picture of what's going on when we litmus test it against the reliability of the counter on the bridge and the formula that we use to try to test it against the population. So we think we're getting sort of 1.5 to 1.6 million uses of the park per year by people. That equates to about 18 visits to the river per person that lives in the city. We haven't factored visitors or others, but we just use that as a test to see if our 1.5 felt reasonable, given that it's probably not statistically reliable in a strict sense. But it does feel about right from our observations. We think that's fairly impressive. We do note that sort of some of the nature of visitation that people have reported in the survey has changed. There's an increasing emphasis on the beauty of the surroundings and a little bit less than there was earlier in the project about visiting the river for exercise. So it suggests that there's a little bit of a transition there to people going to enjoy the space rather than purely for exercise, or not purely for exercise, but dominated by exercise. There's a lot in the report, so I won't try to delve too much further, but I guess the future focus is to be focused on Te Manawatū, the shared path to Ashurst under the roading team's active transport team, and the Te Apiti projects that you've just heard about, and there'll be a little bit less series of projects in the river environments and the urban area as we look at the draft 10-year plan. So I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I think bit of an understatement really to say it's been transformational. It's been hugely transformational for residents. I haven't specifically got any questions, but I've got a Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Just reading this report, the framework was endorsed in 2016, and clearly from what we see, there's a lot that's been achieved already. In terms of the vision that each year there will be more things to do and more people spend time, in terms of the more things to do, at what point would there be a point that we would say we've achieved that goal, or is this an ongoing thing into the future to always have more things to do along the river?
Apologies. We're kind of a little bit of a hold point, and the preparation of the draft 10-year plan has kind of signalled that. Where the future focus for developments along the river is on those three big ticket items, the Te Manawatū, the path to Ashurst. They in themselves will be more things to do along the river, but it'll be less the smaller placemaking or representing the culture and the heritage of the river that'll be done over the next period. Whether or not we want to get back into more work, I guess, will be a question for future LTPs, but the current draft 10-year plan focuses on those three larger ticket items.
Thank you. And just the other question, the marae tarata, is there plans, it says, I'm looking at page 27 there, it says reclaimed. Are there plans for further development there, and if so, where is that?
So Marae Tarata is a space behind, I guess, the resource recovery park, or being a little blunt, the old landfill. It was a space that Higgins had a quarrying lease on, and council made the decision to end that lease when the term ended a couple of years ago. Since then, we've done a reasonably in-depth look at whether we could use that space for an extensive, in conjunction with Rangitāne, looking at that space, whether it could be used as a major wetland development that might do some stormwater treatment coming from the Mangoni. Unfortunately, the feasibility came back on that as being too difficult. The levels that the Mangoni flows through versus the land levels through the Marae Tarata space wouldn't work. We'd be talking about really major earthworks, and that wasn't seen to be feasible. So with Marae Tarata, planning has paused. There was some allowances previously to carry on with work, but that's one of the projects that we've put on pause for a while to focus on those other large projects.
Okay, thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship, o te rā tēnā tātou, tēnā koe, Aaron. Thank you very much for this report. I've got two queries. On the bottom of page 38, there's mention about the river has thrown, when we're talking about the awa, the river has thrown increasing amounts of gravel out onto the beach, making it bigger, but in doing so, it's carved a narrow and deep section of the river out. This means that the swimming spot now has no gradual increase in depth from beach to deep water, making it unsuitable for families and young children. Given that, what are the provisions that we've taken to alert people to that? And secondly, should we even be promoting the awa or that those spots where that has happened as being suitable for swimming for anyone, regardless of what level of ability they have in swimming.
Yes, good point. Deputy Mayor, hopefully I've got this correct and one of you may correct me, but I believe you allocated a sum of money for investigation of safety of the rivers at the last annual plan. That report is being finalised now. In fact, one of our staff met with the report author today down at some of the river spots, and we're expecting that report to give us some guidance on what we should do. There were some immediate actions taken after some of the tragedies of recent years in terms of signage and information on websites and the like through both Horizons and our council, but we're waiting on this report to see if they think what else we should do. Yeah.
In the meantime, while that report has been written or finalised, have we taken any steps to make that area safer or alert people?
We have put up warning signage, yes.
Thank you. And with regards to the survey participants, it's not the first time that I've seen that Māori were underrepresented in survey questioning. Has there been, I suppose, a strategy to look at getting a fair representation of those within the cross-section within our community so that we get feedback from a wide range and we don't have areas of our community underrepresented?
Yeah, that's something we could look at. We could restructure so at the moment we did the surveys just based on time periods, and we asked people as they came past would they be willing to participate in the survey, so we sort of just reported that methodology. We could restructure the survey to say, well, we're going to capture a minimum representation from particular ethnicities, and we could keep surveying until we hit that target rather than just surveying for the strict time periods. We could, yes.
And the methodology used, is it just always the same, or are you open to expanding that?
We could change it. At the moment it was literally students doing the survey at particular river points rather than we were attempting to survey river users, but we hadn't, and on site I guess, but we could look at other methods to get feedback. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. That's the questions done. So we've got a recommendation to the committee around the Manawatū River Framework, a progress report that we receive this Manawatū River Framework Progress Report Attachment 1, presented on the 10th of April 2024. I'm quite happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'll just open up with officers again for the update. It's good to see and actually remind ourselves what has actually happened in this space. Since I've been around the table, it absolutely has been transformational. We used to turn our back to the awa and in some ways not treat it with the respect it deserved, and now we've totally turned round, doing what we should be doing, making things right, and it absolutely is transformational. It's a project for Palmerston North and the wider Manawatū, like New Plymouth's City Coastal Walk or Napier's Vines and Sea Trails, and it's our equivalent really. But I think it's quite interesting to see the stuff that's already been done around Ahamati Park and the connections there, Albert Street entranceway enhancements, but probably the biggie would have to be the Hiara Kotahi Bridge. And look, that did have a little bit of controversy when it first was open, but I think those voices are well and truly silent now, with nearly 1.6 million users of the bridge, the river pathways, just in the last year alone. And all those connections to Linton, to Massey, to the science centres. It's just made our city, it's just given our city another leg, it really has. And I think, still to go, but quite well at projects, but quite well publicised. And I agree with Councillor No, there probably does need to be an end in sight, but it's absolutely a fantastic recreational asset for all the city residents, is the connection to Ashurst, to Te Apiti Manawatū Gorge. We've got to be mindful there's still a little bit of work to be done there, well, actually a lot of work to be done there. Connections to Te Matuapotoa, Anzac Park project, and the massive botanical gardens as well, because there's a group that are working behind the scenes on that project from the university and their alumni. So I'm very happy to, in fact, it's really with great pleasure that I move this, because it really is one project which the city and partners have done extremely well, including, of course, our Rangitāne iwi as well. So I'll go to Councillor Isabella.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll tautoko your comments, and I have a small anecdotal comment myself, because yesterday I had the dubious honour of being a parent helper on a trip to Urban Eels, and we had 70 children on that trip walking from the Hiara Kotahi Bridge all the way down to the Eels and back again. And the fact that you could fit 70 children scampering about and still have ample room for the many other users is quite an achievement of itself. But the whole day was marvellous. I'd just read this report, and so I was taking particular note of the surroundings and the improvements that have been made, and just the turatia pā, the accessibility of the path, the bridge itself, the vegetation, the eels were out in numbers. It was such an enriching experience for all the children who were there, and I felt very proud to be on there. And I think there's 6 key directions in this framework, and they were all evident to me on that trip. So it was a great way to spend the day, and I think it's a successful implementation so far. So congratulations to everyone involved. I think it's wonderful.
Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. I too tautoko all the comments that you've made and Councillor Zabellan has made. I really love the infogram. I think that sort of highlights success and the projects that have been done, and they're quite significant. But I think the objective of having that connectivity across the awa and through the awa is really fantastic. And as someone who is Tāne, I just love seeing the cultural elements highlighted, and it's true, like Councillor Zevelin had said, was turitia pā and the eels, the tuna are quite outstanding. I suppose for me, and I just love it, and well done, yes, I tautoko well done to everyone who's been involved in this. It's good to see when you go across to Hiara Kotahi, the indicator. Every time I go across, I sort of walk and say, oh, X number of people crossed it today or cycled over it. And it's good how you make the distinction between the walking and the cycling. And it does give us, I suppose, some assurance, because you can't have those kind of things all across the awa. We've got so many places you can get in. But it is a fairly good, as Aaron had mentioned, a reliable, reasonable estimation of how many are using it. And I also found that the survey points, there were a number that had improved or had changed over the since last year, the previous time. My big concern would be about the safety of our awa for swimming. And I think that really flagged for me something quite significant about how the awa has changed that course. I mean, I think it's a beautiful awa. I know it's a beautiful awa, but I just want to make sure that everyone who swims on it is safe. And no, ngā mihi nui. That's my comments. Kia ora.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also the infograph that's on page 3 of the audit paper I wanted to reference, I just really think that tells a fantastic story of how much has been done. In fact, I was almost thinking there were some gaps there, because I would add Te Ara Piki Tāne, the steps in Summerhill being part of that, and some of the car parking features at Aremahi, and the artwork installations not on there that's out the back of the golf course. There's things that we've done that aren't actually captured in here, and it's made it a real feature both day and night with the how the paths light up in the light of the moon and the stars and things like that. It's become a real a feature and an attraction for users and for those to visit to come and experience. So again, wanted to reference that. And the only other thing I wanted to show appreciation for, I've never seen the image on page figure 6, the tier, with the former par site there and the platform that you can see depicted in the in that piece of art, the very place where we've installed it. So I knew there was one that existed in the past, but I hadn't actually picked that up, that historic photo. So yeah, really highlighting those key features of history, culture, and just recreational use and tourism that have really intertwined in this project. So thank you.
Yeah, and look, just in writer reply, thank you, colleagues, for your comments. I think the infographics there on page 23 is fantastic, and it is a real success because I shouldn't say we often, sometimes we get harangued for things that council does. I can think of one in particular at the moment, but this is a real success, and the return on investment of this linear park is huge. A couple of other things that we forgot to mention. We built with the Victoria Esplanade Railway that entranceway back down, which is widely used by the public, back down into the walkway and to the Hiaro Kotahi Bridge. We've got a new river entranceway off Centennial Park in the Hokowhitu Lagoon. There's obviously the success of urban eels, which I was remiss in mentioning, and also the Turitea Pa with Rangitāne. So, it's you can't understate how successful this has been. So, thank you all. We will vote. It is passed, 8 votes for and none against. Thank you. Right, we now have the Te Whirikoko Council engagement, and I invite Todd Taipea, to our Principal Māori Advisor, to present that. Kia ora, Todd.
Tēnā tātou. Tūtahi te kara ki te miha tu kia koe, te kai kaunihira Fitzgerald. Nau rā te karakia tuku, hei whakawairo i tō tātou hui kia whakawātea te wahana kōrero, tēnā koe. Koutou, te haukainga o Rangitāne o Manawatū, nei rā te mihi nui kia koutou i tēnei hei. I te kahika tuarua koutou nā kai kaunihira, tēnā koutou, i runga i tō ātea, I runga ke rā I te marau hine tapoto mai rā. Nō reira huri no tō tātou whare, tēnā tātou katoa. Good afternoon, everybody. So, just presenting the updates around the kaupapa, the items that have been for Te Whirikoko for information, consideration, feedback, primarily with our officers and our senior management. Because of the relatively short time frame between this meeting of the Rangitāne o Manawatū Committee and the previous, there's only been 2 meetings of Te Whirikoko, so it's a little bit slimmer a report than usual. But beyond that, I'll leave it to be the report as tabled, and just answer any questions if you have any. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you, Todd. I'll open it up for any questions. Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, thanks, Todd, for the update. Just, I noticed a budget line in the LTP that was better off funding, and I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion in Te Whirikoko about the use of that better off funding.
So there are 3 primary programs. Rangitāne have values in the others, but those where there's a particularly strong element, some just trying to make sure I can recall correctly. So we have the Te Motua Pautua. So that is reported fairly regularly through council. For obvious reasons, it's a significant kaupapa and quite a lot of resource. But there's also a couple of other programs. One to support the marae tōtu manawa Rangitāne in terms of its capacity on behalf of Rangitāne, but also its contribution to the wider, not just iwi and Māori community, but the wider city, and particularly those in the Aupuni space. So that's also a program, but that is be sitting outside of my parameter. I think there may be a colleague in infrastructure who might have a comment. And then the third program, somebody remind me. Sorry?
It's the Kairo Kaha.
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, the Kairo Kaha role held by Mackenzie Mackay. She is working between Rangitāne o Manawatū, based in the Te Ao Turoa Environmental Division, and the council. And her areas of focus, I guess, it's particularly just around capacity. There's a lot of work, a lot of mahi that's being generated because of the range of projects we're involved in working together, and she brings a lot of technical and research skills. One area of particular benefit is assisting our operational settings, so we often are complemented in this space and others for the nature of the relationship. I think it's very strong with our elected members, senior management and staff. But the more we work together, the more getting the details right becomes really critical. So that's one area that Mackenzie's role contributes to, is understanding. For example, we're doing some work around Waitapu, ancestral sites, which there are many that many of our elected members will know that are within the landscape of Papaiuia, Palmerston North. And as a council, we're privileged to have a role with many of those. They're often on council reserves, council parks. But we would like, and I think that it's important that our staff understand the values, understand how we should work with those spaces, when we might be able to just independently manage our functions with due respect, and on some occasions where we would only really engage with those spaces with Rangitāne alongside us and with appropriate tikanga. So that's a summation of some of the strengths of that role. There may be some others in the room who can contribute, but those are the three. So the Te Motua Pautua project is really managed pretty independently from Te Wherikōkō. It's a large project with a lot of resources, and again, you're getting reported directly. The Kairokaha role is essentially managed as a role within council and within Rangitāne. So I'd say it's managed as in the management space, and the develops at the marae really more just our infrastructure staff relating to that program and supporting it. But I can't really speak directly to that right now. Yeah, kia ora. Sorry for a bit of a roundabout response to your question.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up, will the allocation of that better off funding or the outcomes that are achieved through that funding be reported through Te Wherikōkō or through another mechanism, and where might we see that going forward?
Thinking about handing this off to David, my chief officer. Te Motua Pautua clearly is being reported directly to you as council. My understanding with the Kairokaha role is it's a business as usual role, and it's within the organisation. So there may be some opportunities to report in this space. I don't think it's certainly acknowledged within the Te Whare Kōkō, the report here. You'll see it mentioned. I can't really speak to whether that's a role that its outcomes are reported directly here or not in this moment.
Perhaps just to be more specific, I'm referring to the better off funding that sits in the direction setting,
the whole lot of it.
direction setting part of our LTP, and it looked like there was 3 years of funding. So I didn't think that related to ongoing. I thought those might be some specific programs or projects, but I just thought it would be a good time to ask a bit more clarity around that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. David Murphy, Chief Planning Officer. So that funding that's shown is effectively kind of money in, money out. So it's money we receive from the government for Better Off, and then it's allocated to fund the, in terms of that funding that sits in the direction setting, to then fund the Kairo Kaha role, which Todd has talked about. So that role has a start and end time that's linked to the funding that we receive from Better Off. There's a contract with TMI to undertake that role. The contract says that if any point in time the Better Off funding was pulled or ceased, then that contract finishes. So it's effectively spending the money that we get from that was allocated via the Better Off funding.
Thank you, that's helpful.
And just speaking to the CE, I understand that the first tranche of Better Off funding too, which has been spent totally on waters, will be reported back to us at some stage too, because that's just about all the final parts of that are being finished at the moment. Councillor Isabella.
Thank you. Kia ora, Todd. Kotahi pātai tāku anake. About 2.1, you talk about Te Tapu Ai Tahi as a publication that's been launched, and I wondered, is there a digital counterpart of that, something online, or is that specifically something that's in print?
I only know it as a physical resource. It's definitely the eyesight. It may be at our customer service centre, but yesterday we were having a meeting around onboarding of our new staff, just as part of that program. And I recommended that would be a fantastic package to have for those new staff. I think it's a very impressive piece of work, so I didn't bring one along, but it opens out essentially like an open out map, but it gives very sort of clear identification of a number of key cultural sites and narratives from Rangitāne around those. It's actually a really great expression of the kaupapa we've just discussed earlier in terms of, but beyond that, te awa. So, yeah, it's certainly worth having a look. I'm sure we could get some into the councillor room if you have a little bit of a look at, but yeah, I think it's a great representation of a kind of emergent identity for the city, which the Mayor acknowledged earlier, where the river is much more woven into the story and the identity of who we are, and for many is seen as the centre of who we are. So I think that package is a great representation of this moment and the journey with Rangitāne as a city, and is definitely of value. So kia ora.
Great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Todd. And let me just start. Wellbeing Forum on Friday, so kapai, thank you very much. My question really is just around paragraph 2.5, which talks about the Māori wards, and I'm not sure whether you're able to give an update on that or some indication of how that's going to be advanced, please.
No, that wouldn't be me right now. The government's positions are clear, which is useful. I think there's lots of talk about what the position around Māori wards would be and how it would be enacted. And I guess in the scope of it, it's probably at the end of it certainly makes it a challenging space to maintain in terms of the current position of this council. But I imagine there's lots of conversations and lots of spaces, including this table, as to what it means. But it's, I think it's very early days in terms of an institutional response to this. Yeah, that's all I have to say in this role. Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure whether somebody can actually answer this, but in terms of this committee, is there an appetite, I guess, for some resolution to, I suppose, inform the council's response to the government's stance on Māori wards?
Not really sure, but I'm pretty sure the council will be pushing back on what the minister's written to us about. I'm not sure. Are you wanting to put something in here to add to that?
Well, I can't because I'm not a member of this committee, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'm just questioning as to what formal process might this committee consider to, I guess, formalise our council's response to central government's approach to Māori wards, which is unfair.
Yeah, well, we could put we could formalise a resolution to maybe recommend to full council that the Rangitāne on Manawatū committee disagrees with the minister's letter, and something to that accord. If those on the committee felt that was justified, I think we'll have to respond from council, because it's actually asking us to actually disengage really by 2028. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really wanted to, I guess, illuminate that in terms of this committee and of course the mahi and the approach of this committee. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm just following up from Councillor Hancock's comments, and I'm just wondering if the resolution that we recently put through council in terms of the Zone 3 remit on that issue, whether that covers that off. I thought it had, but just sort of flagging that as something I thought we had recently covered. But just aside from that, I really appreciate this update. It's really great to have this level of information coming through to the committee. So thanks for that.
Okay, are these questions or more comments? Okay, they're still questions. That's okay. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's a comment.
Oh, okay. You're released. Thanks, Todd.
Actually, just to acknowledge from that question, I probably just would add to the initial question. So Rangitāne have clearly represented at the meeting that they were not in support of that and wanted to push back. Obviously, as an organisation in my role, the expectation would be that at some point there would be advice would be sought or reporting back. Yeah, it's just that there's a lot of thinking to go under the bridge, but certainly any direction from this space will help to frame that. So,
before you go, Todd, I just have two very quick ones. What was the croquet club at the Esplanade? I note that there's some additional updates. What was the issue there with the lease? So that's on page 51.
I can't recall offhand, but I know we have the detail of that.
Can you just come back to us?
Yeah, sure.
It's obviously just something that's been discussed. Can't be too much because you would have put it in some more detail.
Yep.
And the second thing is just to confirm, because there was real confusion at the Manawatū, the Te Apiti governance group around the dual naming. Nothing had been socialised with the members. I knew nothing about it, and consequently abstained from the voting because I just didn't know what was going on. Has that discussion happened since?
Horizons has picked it up as an institution, as something they want to
Yeah.
run with. And until that was formalised, it didn't seem like something to necessarily socialise, because it was just an idea. So obviously it's out in the world a little bit now. I don't know what communication has occurred.
It was poorly. It
out
was
in the
very
world.
poorly done, and
Yeah.
I would say it's overstating that it was socialised. It wasn't socialised at all,
Yep.
and consequently, it was just the Manawatū gorge was going to be dropped, so it's just going to be called Te Apiti. And actually, Horizons Te Kenehe, Taylor, one of the Horizons Māori ward councillors, actually disagreed with it as well, as I did, because it was just shoved into the conversation, and consequently it was a split vote, one of the first ever in that group. So I don't know whether there's something you need to take back to your colleagues about perhaps socialising that a bit better.
Happy to give feedback. It was certainly something I wasn't considering us picking up as an institution at the time, but would have had expectations that the narrative would have been developed and shared in an appropriate way. But I obviously can't speak to that. I wasn't there. But I'll certainly engage with our colleagues at Horizons and get a sense of what occurred. And
Yeah, I think the right outcome's turned up, because it says here dual naming of Te Apiti to Manawatū Gorge. That was not what was stated in the meeting. It was just purely Te Apiti, which Apiti has a quite a generic meaning in Te Reo, doesn't it? So it could be anywhere.
it certainly was a dual name at the level of discussion amongst
Right.
Māori advisory colleagues.
Oh,
so
that's good.
It may have evolved to something else from there, obviously. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor, o tira tēnā tātou ngā mihi e te pau toko aporei. Tēnā koe, Todd. Just a question regarding 2.3, around the consultation regarding Te Motu o Pautoa. Did Te Whirikoko have a preference of how that consultation should happen?
I don't recall it being finalised there. There was some ongoing discussion to occur with the communications team, some key issues where, for example, would there be specific signage? And my recollection is there was openness to that, basically to capture users who are up at the site specifically. There is some quite extensive material being shared at Te Whirikoko on Friday, just so Rangitāne are clear, clear broadly, but just the detail of our engagement processes. We were asked to or supported to have a space at the upcoming regional kapahaka. But beyond that, I can't, there wasn't a specific met with Rangitāne in this space resolved. I guess as staff we're trying to ensure we can give high quality, clear information and resources so that Rangitāne can perhaps use that within existing iwi spaces and iwi networks. But I know our staff are certainly open to working in innovative ways if it can assist engagement. Yeah.
Thank you. And my last question is with regards to 2.8. I've got to be careful here, I can't say comment, but love the name Te Whare Kauru. I'll slip that in there. But are there any details about the opening of that facility?
We have a date now, but I'm going to have to be careful because I'm not organising it. I think it's certainly a proposed date. It may be with Rangitāne, just confirming availability. So I won't announce that now, but certainly it feels like we're very close to a date. I believe it's in May at the moment. I'm certain it's in May. Middle of May would be my sense, but I think the councillors will be getting an invitation very early, is my understanding. Soon, sorry, very soon.
Councillor Fitzgerald, would you?
Comment.
Oh, sorry. Kept thinking you wanted a question. Stay with me, caller. Right, thank you, Todd. That's the questions done. Appreciate the update and the work and the mahi that's going on in the background. So we have the recommendation around Te Whiri Koko council engagement with Rangitāne on Manawatū, and the committee receives the memorandum titled Te Whiri Koko council engagement with Rangitāne on Manawatū presented to this committee on the 10th of April 2024. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'll go to you, Councillor Fitzgerald, because you've been waiting so patiently.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just to acknowledge Councillor Hancock's question around the Māori wards, I just wanted to give a bit of context that when the coalition government signalled in their 100-day plan of a desire to play around with the Māori wards by bringing back the referendum, that's what brought the Māori ward councillors of the Horizons region together in Foxton on the 23rd of February. Because there was a Zone 3 meeting coming up, we formulated a remit and brought it to the table here. So I want to acknowledge each of my councillor colleagues for endorsing that, which allowed me to take it and present it at Gisborne. So I'm just repeating that because that was the nature of the remit going to the Zone 3 meeting. What Minister Brown did was after the Gisborne Zone 3 meeting by announcing they are going to bring back the referendums. So similarly to what Gisborne District Council has decided to do, next Thursday at their council meeting they are going to pass a formal resolution on behalf of the council objecting to the government's referendum policy. So I just wanted to perhaps share that and support a motion going forward that perhaps our council might want to do the same, given that the playing field has changed for the reason that I went to Gisborne for the Zone 3 meeting. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor. Oh. You don't have to.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor, o tira, tēnā tātou. I want to thank Todd, and his team, Leon, who are here, for the work that they've done in presenting this pūrongo, this report. And I suppose what it evidences is the huge amount of work that goes on in the background, but also the collaborative way in which Rangitāne or Manawatū work with Palmerston City Council. And I'm really appreciative for all the things that have been raised here and the work that goes on behind the scenes, and for that collaboration by everyone involved. Coming back, I support wholeheartedly what Councillor Hancock and Councillor Fitzgerald have mentioned with regards to the referendum on Māori wards. And I too want to acknowledge our colleagues when Councillor Fitzgerald had raised that point, the support that we felt from all of you. Nō reira ngā mihi ki a koutou. And there's Councillor Zabellin in that as well, you know, ngā mihi. The whare kauru, or the animal shelter, I suppose I smiled when I read that name, and of course the narrative provided with that, but I thought how apt was that name, and the narrative given, it gives it substance, it gives it a wairua, a meaning, so I'm really thankful for that, and looking forward to also the opening in May, because no doubt, although this was decided and started before I came on council, I think it's a fantastic initiative and facility, and I think that I know it couldn't have been easy navigating your way through all of that, but I do think we're coming to the end, and that will be something very, very special. Nō reira. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was with reference to 2.6, the new addition to the Passport to Pāmi play, and Play Pāmi, should I say. How cool is that title? Pūnanga ki papai o ia play trail. That's got a real cool vibe and name to that, and it captures probably the fun and that won't be lost on young people. That won't be lost on school-age children or anything. And the activities and the things that have gone on behind that are pretty exciting as well. But the cultural narratives are imbued throughout that, and I thank the staff across the council. Thank you to our CE for supporting his staff to imbue those cultural narratives as well. Nō reira, tēnā koutou.
Councillor Dennison, my apologies, somehow you...
Oh, no, thank you, Mr Mayor. I did actually pop back out and pop back in, so with grace, no need to apologise. Just wanting to pick up on the theme of updates and position for the city around Māori wards. And I would, it says here in 2.5 that Rangitāne we're encouraging Pāmasnos to support this stance and will be expressing their formally to us. And I would just maybe pick up on what Councillor Hancock was suggesting for the city to take the lead and not have to be prompted in that way and to actually make our stance independently. Because I believe that we did make a significant shift. I think there has been huge benefit because of Māori representation around the table, and the benefit of having fair and effective representation for everybody. And to go backwards with, and not having a stance, but to go backwards and just be part of this new wave back to retrench all that, I think it's very counterproductive, and I think it's actually quite... whatever the word is for unification, in the contrary, you know, I think it actually creates more severing of goodwill and what's been achieved by adopting it. So that would be my promotion, is that we do as a city actually formalise a view, and whether we have to put up a recommendation from this committee, I think that's only part of it. I think we could do it on our own basis of a city, and to take a discussion and lead in this. So not only for our region, but nationwide, I think local government has an opportunity to actually be quite a strong voice to push back on this theme of what's been proposed by the new coalition. So that would be my voice into that. While we're on that, I do think there is some aspects of it around the representation review that do have some subtleties. For example, with us, I think there's real benefit having 2 elected members. I'm getting into a little bit more of the political subtleties around this table. But if we were to reduce the size of our council, we would limit only 1 representative to being able in the mix of ratio, with our current electors opting for the Māori list or the general list. And I think that would be a real disadvantage, or that's one of the things I want to have, is a real consideration that cities or local authorities can choose the number of representations and not be dictated by that ratio, because I think there's a real argument for a smaller representation around this table, and I think I feel like that argument wasn't pursued because of the willingness and desire to have at least 2 Rangitāne representatives around this table. So that's a point of further exploration, let alone the general theme. I think Māori wards are great for not only our city but for our country. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, councillors and members. A couple of comments from me. Just want to acknowledge the work that's been done there on our footprint work with around significant cultural sites between Rangitāne and Cedar. It's quite impressive, actually. There's a lot there, and there's a lot of work that we've in truth joint venture fashion, we've been very much part of. So congratulations on that. Looks really good. The Māori wards, yeah, look, I'll be careful what I say because I'll get quoted, but what not to do. But anyway, let's just leave it there. I'm with the comments that you've made, Councillor Dennison, and also Councillor Fitzgerald, but Councillor Dennison's right. I mean, this council's actually benefited hugely from contribution of our Māori ward councillors. In fact, I don't even consider them Māori ward councillors, and I mean that in a really positive way. I mean, you're contributing as much as anybody else, but having that cultural lens over things I think does bring real benefits to us in the way we govern. Huge backward step if we go down this path. I hope we won't. I know the writer of it, of the Minister, and I know the Prime Minister, and I'll be speaking to them, and I've got the Minister here in May, and I'll certainly be diplomatically, but thinking he may have taken a wrong pathway there. I can't see any benefit to New Zealand, and certainly not to this council, but New Zealand, by trying to go back on some of the good work that's been done. I too, councillor, think that we should have something as a council on this, and I would hope that we might be unanimous on that. I'm pretty sure we'll get a very, very strong majority, but be unanimous on that, because here's the proof. This is what we're doing. It's the mahi that we're doing now. A couple of other things on the work that Todd's team have been doing. Look, the dual naming of the gorge, Te Apiti, it happens anyway. I always talk about it as Te Apiti, the Manawatū Gorge, but when they were going to drop the Manawatū and Gorge part, that's when I got, and I didn't vote for it. So it's good that it has been sorted, and please go back to your colleagues, Todd, and maybe clear that up, and it would be good next time they want to make quite a major change that they do socialise it, because to me it wasn't handled that well, and it could have been handled so much better. But it should be named Te Apiti Manawatū Gorge there somewhere. Finally, just the presentation from Ra Jury. Ra came and spoke to me about his passion around mainly sports facilities, to be fair. It's worthy of socialising a little bit further. It does have some wide-ranging changes if we were going to go down a pathway of what he's suggesting, but I do wonder if there is some way of taking the really good stuff that he's suggesting and pulling it into some of our existing city facilities. So I'm encouraging him to perhaps present a little bit further and wider to maybe management and elected members at some stage, and then just seeing where that could go with likes of Arena Master Plan, but even some of our reserves, our Calhoun Park, our Twin Turfs with hockey, Fortier Park with netball, etc. But as you know, the Jury family and Ra especially does do things. He's more than just talk. There's definitely a lot of action with him. So I was quite impressed with what he had to present to us. So look, thank you for that update. There's a lot that goes on in this space, and it's quite good. I think it's a worthy report that we get updated on every quarter. So we have the recommendation there. I'll ask you to vote, please. That is passed, 8 votes for and none against. Thank you. Right, moving on to our number 10 and our last item on the agenda, which is around our committee work schedule, and that the Rangitāne Manawatū Committee received its work schedule for April 2024, and I'm quite happy to move that. A seconder, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And are there any additions to that? Being none, we will look to vote, please. That's passed, 8 votes for and none against. All right, if I could ask Councillor Fitzgerald to close out our hui today. Councillor.
Tēnā koe te kaika. Koutou e noho mai nei, ko tēnei te kupu whakakapi o te rā nei. Kia puta ki te whae au, ki te ao marama. Whakamaua kia tīna.
Tīna.
Haumie, huie, tā ki e. Kia ora tātou.